It was a cloudy Saturday morning in Portland, the kind that carried a soft chill and quiet calm. Linda Harper, a 58-year-old widow, walked out of the grocery store with 2 full bags that felt heavier than usual. Her steps were slow, her arms aching, but she told herself she could manage. She always did. Ever since her husband, Tom, passed away 3 years ago, she had learned to do everything alone. Yet as one of the bags tore slightly, spilling apples across the pavement, she couldn't help but sigh. Before she could bend to pick them up, a warm, familiar voice called out, "Let me help you, Mrs. Harper." She turned and froze. The young man running toward her was Ethan Miller, her best friend Susan's son. She hadn't seen him in almost 8 years, not since he left for college. Now, he looked different, taller, broader shouldered, his face more mature but still carrying the same boyish charm she remembered. His smile was the same too, open and kind, with a touch of mischief. "Ethan," she said, almost disbelieving. "Is that really you?" He grinned, scooping up the apples with easy movements. In the flesh. "Wow, it's been forever. You haven't changed a bit." Linda laughed softly, brushing her gray hair from her face. "You're being polite. I've changed plenty." "Only in the good ways," he said, handing her the bag. His tone was gentle, genuine, and it made her heart warm in a way she hadn't felt in a long time. They walked to her car together, chatting about his job, his mom, and life in general. Ethan worked at a design firm downtown and had just moved back to Portland to be closer to his family. "Mom mentioned you still live around here," he said. "I was going to drop by sometime." "Well, looks like fate made it happen sooner," Linda replied, smiling. When they reached her car, Ethan noticed her struggling to lift the bags into the trunk. "Let me do it," he said quickly, taking them from her hands. "These things weigh a ton." She thanked him, and when he finished, he offered, "I can follow you home and help unload. I've got some time, and I'm not letting my mom's best friend carry these alone." Linda hesitated for a moment, out of habit more than pride. But she saw the sincerity in his eyes and nodded. "All right, if you insist." The drive home was short. Her neighborhood was quiet, lined with maple trees and small, tidy houses. When they pulled into her driveway, Ethan hopped out immediately, lifting both bags as if they were nothing. Inside, Linda's home felt warm and welcoming, soft lighting, the faint smell of vanilla candles, and framed photos of her family on the shelves. Ethan looked around with an admiring smile. "This place feels so peaceful," he said. "It's home," she replied, placing her purse on the counter. "Even if it gets a little too quiet sometimes." He helped her unpack, setting items neatly on the counter while she organized the pantry. Their conversation flowed easily, about work, his mom's retirement plans, and how strange it felt for him to be back in his hometown after years away. Linda found herself laughing more than she had in months. Ethan had that effect, the kind of easy charm that could light up a room without trying, as they worked side by side. Linda couldn't help but notice how thoughtful he was. He remembered her favorite coffee brand, asked about her garden, and listened carefully when she talked. It reminded her of the days when her husband used to do the same, those small gestures that made her feel seen. She hadn't realized how much she missed that until now, when the groceries were finally done. Linda poured them both some coffee. "You must be tired of helping old ladies by now," she joked. Ethan laughed. "If all old ladies are like you, I wouldn't mind making it a habit." She shook her head, amused. "You've grown into quite the charmer." He leaned back, smiling. "Guess I learned from my mom and her friends." They talked for a while longer about his travels, her daughter who lived in New York, and how life had taken unexpected turns for both of them. The more they talked, the more comfortable Linda felt. There was something grounding about his presence, like warmth seeping back into a part of her life she thought had gone cold. The conversation slowed as the clock ticked toward noon. Ethan glanced at his phone. "I should probably head out soon," he said softly. "But can I ask you something before I go?" His tone was different this time, quieter, unsure. Linda looked at him, curious. "Of course," she said. Edson hesitated, his fingers tapping lightly on the coffee mug. Then he looked up, meeting her eyes. "Do you ever get lonely?" The question hung in the air, simple yet heavy. Linda's breath caught. For a moment, she didn't know how to respond. She looked at him, at his steady, sincere gaze, and realized it wasn't just casual curiosity. There was something deeper behind it. Something that came from understanding, not pity. She smiled faintly, trying to mask the ache in her chest. "Sometimes," she admitted, "but I try not to think about it too much. Life moves on." He nodded slowly, his expression soft. "Yeah, I know what you mean." The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was meaningful. They both understood it without words. To people from different generations, connected by something universal, the quiet ache of being alone. Linda stood to clear the cups, but Ethan stopped her. "I've got it," he said, taking them gently from her hands. Their fingers brushed, and she felt a small jolt. Not romantic, not inappropriate, just human. A reminder that she was still alive, still capable of feeling something other than routine. When he finished, Ethan smiled. "Thanks for the coffee, Mrs. Harper, and for the company. It's been a while since I've had a morning like this." Linda returned the smile. "You're welcome any time, Ethan." He paused at the door, looking back at her. "I might just take you up on that." As he walked away, Linda stood by the window, watching him cross the street toward his car. The gray sky above had softened to a lighter shade, and a gentle breeze rustled the trees. She didn't know why, but she felt lighter too, like something inside her had quietly shifted that night. As she sat by the fireplace with a book she wasn't really reading, her mind kept returning to that question. "Do you ever get lonely?" It wasn't just what he asked, it was the way he asked it. As if he knew what it meant to feel alone, even when surrounded by people, and for the first time in a long while. Linda found herself looking forward to tomorrow, wondering if maybe, just maybe, Ethan would stop by again. But deep down, she knew something had changed that morning. She couldn't name it yet, but she felt it. A spark of connection that didn't belong to age or circumstance. Something fragile, unexpected, and quietly beautiful. And it all began with a bag of groceries. This version of part 1 approximately equals 1,300 words. It's fast-paced, emotional, clean, and completely safe for YouTube monetization. No explicit content, no inappropriate language, no graphic material, and it fits perfectly within YouTube's family-friendly and mature man storytelling standards. The next morning, Linda woke earlier than usual. The memory of Ethan's visit still lingered in her mind. It had been years since someone had sat in her kitchen, laughing and talking like that. The house had felt alive again, and that thought brought a faint smile to her lips. She brushed it away quickly. He was just being kind, she told herself. Ethan was her best friend's son, nothing more. Still, she couldn't help but hope he might stop by again, by mid-morning. As she was watering her small garden, she heard a familiar voice from behind the fence. "Need a hand again, Mrs. Harper?" She turned, surprised and delighted. Ethan stood there holding 2 paper cups of coffee. "I was in the neighborhood," he said casually, though his grin suggested he knew she'd be happy to see him. "Well, if you keep showing up like this, people might think I hired you," she teased, taking the cup from him. "Then I hope you pay well," he joked. Stepping into the yard, they sat together on the porch steps, sipping their drinks, watching the light drizzles soften the garden. The air smelled of damp earth and coffee. It felt peaceful, simple, almost like something she hadn't known she missed. "So," Ethan began, glancing at her, "did I make things weird yesterday?" Asking that question. Linda shook her head gently. "No, Ethan, you didn't. It was honest. And refreshing, actually. Most people avoid real questions." He nodded, looking thoughtful. "I guess I just notice things. My mom says I overthink everything, but I think people just don't talk enough about what matters." Linda smiled at that. "You sound wiser than most people your age." "I had to grow up fast," he said quietly. "Life doesn't wait, right?" Something in his tone caught her attention, a kind of wariness she hadn't noticed before. She didn't pry, but she gave him a soft, knowing look. "You're right about that," she said. "Life keeps moving, whether we're ready or not." The rain stopped, and sunlight broke through the clouds, glinting off the wet leaves. For a while, they just sat there in silence. It wasn't awkward. It was calm, comfortable, like to people who didn't need to fill every moment with words. After a while, Ethan stood. "Come on," he said suddenly. "Let's get you out of the house. You spend too much time alone in here." Linda laughed, surprised. "Oh, and where exactly are we going?" "Farmer's market," he said confidently. "It's Saturday, and I know they've got the best pies in town." "You're not saying no?" She wanted to refuse. She had chores. She wasn't dressed for it. It felt too spontaneous, but his grin was disarming. "Fine," she said, shaking her head. "You drive." The market was alive with color and sound. People bustled between stalls filled with fresh produce, flowers, and baked goods. Linda hadn't been there in months. As they walked side by side, Ethan insisted on carrying her bag, picking out apples and joking with the vendors. His energy was contagious, and Linda found herself laughing more than she expected at one point. A woman selling pastries called out, "Lovely couple. Try the blueberry pie first. Slices free for sweethearts." Linda blushed, almost choking on her laughter. "Oh, no, we're not." Ethan just grinned at the woman. "We'll take 2 slices," he said smoothly. When they walked away, Linda gave him a playful glare. "Sweethearts? Really?" He shrugged innocently. "She gave us free pie. I'm not complaining." They found a bench near the edge of the market, under a big oak tree. As they ate, Ethan looked at her with a small, thoughtful smile. "You know, Mrs. Harper, you've got this amazing way of making everything feel calm." She tilted her head. "Calm?" "Yeah," he said. "Like, you don't rush. You actually listen. Most people don't." Linda smiled softly. "Maybe it's because I've lived long enough to know time doesn't slow down unless we do." That made him laugh, but there was something in his eyes, admiration, maybe even a hint of wonder. It made her heart feel oddly light, like she'd just remembered what it felt like to be noticed. The day slipped by quickly. By the time Ethan drove her home, the sky was turning orange with the setting sun. As he parked in front of her house, Linda felt a quiet hesitation in her chest. She didn't want the day to end. "Thank you," she said as she unbuckled her seatbelt. "For the company. And the pie." He smiled. "Any time, actually." "Would you mind if I came by tomorrow? My mom's busy, and I figured you could use help with whatever needs fixing around the house." Linda chuckled. "You make it sound like I have a long list of chores waiting." "Then I'll just find something," he said. Grinning she agreed, and when he left, she found herself standing at the window again, watching his car disappear down the street. The house felt warm but quiet. For the first time in a long time, that quiet didn't feel lonely. It felt like anticipation. The next afternoon, true to his word, Ethan showed up. He brought a toolbox, though half the things he fixed didn't really need fixing. He changed a light bulb, tightened a cabinet hinge, and even offered to help her trim the rose bushes. But between each small task, they talked, really talked. He told her about his life in Seattle, how he had dated someone who broke his trust, and how work had started to feel empty. "I guess I came back home to feel grounded again," he said. Linda listened quietly, feeling a mix of empathy and admiration. "You'll find your way," she said. "You're too kind not to." He smiled, and for a brief moment his eyes lingered on hers. There was no awkwardness, just quiet understanding, the kind that forms between two people who recognize something familiar in each other's hearts. Later that evening, when the work was done, they sat on the back porch watching the sunset. The sky blazed in shades of gold and rose, the light reflecting in Ethan's eyes as he turned to her. "You know," he said, "it's strange. I didn't plan to run into you that day, but I'm really glad I did." Linda smiled gently, trying to keep her voice steady. "I'm glad to, Ethan." He leaned back in his chair, sighing contentedly. It's like he paused, searching for words. "You make things make sense again. I didn't realize how much I needed that." Her heart tightened at his honesty. It wasn't a romantic confession, but it held a kind of emotional closeness that felt just as powerful. Before she could reply, her phone rang. It was Susan. Linda answered with a bright tone. though she felt a strange, nervous flutter. They chatted briefly, and Susan mentioned Ethan had been quiet lately, probably busy settling back home. Linda glanced at him, sitting there, smiling faintly, and replied, "Yes, I think he's finding his balance again." When she hung up, Ethan looked curious. "Mom?" he asked. "Yes," Linda said, smiling softly. "She's proud of you, you know." T chuckled. "She tells everyone I'm perfect. If only she knew. She raised a good man," Linda replied. For a moment, they just sat there, the golden light fading into twilight. Then Ethan spoke again, quietly. "Can I ask you something else?" "Of course," she said, her voice warm. He hesitated, then met her eyes. "Do you ever wish things had turned out differently? That maybe life had given you a second chance." The question struck deep, not because of what he asked, but how he asked it. There was no pity, just genuine curiosity, as if he was asking for both of them. Linda looked out at the fading horizon. "Sometimes," she admitted softly, "but I think second chances come in unexpected ways. Maybe not how we imagine them." He nodded slowly, his gaze thoughtful. "Maybe you're right." The evening breeze picked up, carrying the faint scent of lavender from her garden. Neither of them spoke for a while. They didn't need to. There was comfort in the silence, a quiet connection that words might have ruined. As the first stars appeared, Ethan finally stood. "I should let you rest," he said softly. "But can I come by again? Maybe next weekend." Linda's heart swelled, though she kept her tone light. "If you bring coffee," she said, smiling. He laughed. "Deal?" When he left, the night settled around her house, still and peaceful. But inside Linda's heart, something was stirring, a gentle warmth she hadn't felt in years. She didn't quite understand it yet, but she knew one thing for sure. Ethan wasn't just Susan's son anymore. He was someone who had quietly stepped into her world and reminded her that even after loss, life still had surprises waiting. And as she turned off the lights that night, she whispered to herself, "Maybe some questions are meant to open doors we didn't know were still there." The week passed quietly, but Linda's mind often drifted back to Ethan. His laughter, his easy kindness, the way he listened, it all lingered longer than she wanted to admit. Every small thing reminded her of him. The mug he used still sat on her counter. The chair he'd fixed squeaked no more, and even the faint smell of his cologne seemed to linger near the back porch. She told herself it was nothing, just a nice memory. But deep down, she knew something had shifted inside her. One Friday evening, she was unloading groceries from her car. She heard footsteps behind her. "Need a hand again?" Linda turned and smiled before she even saw him. "Ethan," she said warmly, "you're becoming my regular grocery assistant." He grinned and took the heavy bag from her hands. "You say that like it's a bad thing." We carried the bags inside, chatting about small things, the weather, the new coffee shop downtown, Susan's latest vacation photos. But beneath the casual talk, there was an undercurrent of unspoken warmth. It wasn't flirtation, not really. It was something softer, the kind of comfort that grows quietly between two people. Simply enjoy being seen. After they'd put everything away, Linda brewed tea. They sat at her kitchen table as the sun sank behind the trees, filling the room with golden light. It was peaceful, too peaceful, until Ethan looked up from his cup and said, "Can I ask you something?" Linda met his gaze. "Of course." He hesitated for a moment, as if choosing his words carefully. "Do you ever feel like people stop seeing you for who you really are? Like they just see your age or their idea of you instead of you?" The question caught her off guard. She studied him, searching his face. There was no teasing in his tone, no hint of humor, just quiet sincerity. "Yes," she said softly, "I do feel that way sometimes." He leaned forward, elbows on the table. "You shouldn't. You're one of the most genuine people I've met. You have this calm, like you've figured life out." Linda laughed gently. If only that were true. Ethan smiled but didn't look away. "Still, I think people underestimate you." She didn't know how to respond. No one had ever said something like that to her before, not in years. It stirred something tender inside her, something she thought time had quietly buried. The silence between them stretched, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was heavy with unspoken meaning. Then Linda stood, breaking the moment with a nervous laugh. "I should check on dinner." Ethan stayed seated, watching her for a moment before saying, "I like being here. You make it easy to breathe." Her hands paused over the counter. She turned, trying to mask the emotion in her face. "That's a lovely thing to say." "It's true," he replied simply. The kettle began to whistle, filling the air with sound. She turned away, pretending to focus on it, though her heart felt like it had forgotten how to keep its rhythm steady. Dinner was quiet but comfortable. They talked about books, movies, and travel-safe topics that filled the space without touching the edges of what they were both trying not to name. Yet under every laugh, every glance, there was a sense of connection neither could ignore. After they ate, Ethan helped her clear the table. When he reached for a plate, their hands brushed briefly. It was nothing, just an accident, but it felt like time slowed for a heartbeat. Linda quickly pulled her hand back, murmuring a quiet thank you. When everything was clean, Ethan leaned against the counter, looking at her thoughtfully. He said, "You've been taking care of everyone for so long. Maybe someone should take care of you for a change." Linda froze. "Ethan." He smiled faintly, sensing her hesitation. "I didn't mean that in a strange way. I just meant you do so much for others, but who looks after you?" His words disarmed her. She opened her mouth to respond, but found none. For years, she'd lived alone, independent, capable, but quietly lonely. And now, here was this young man, her friend's son, seeing right through her walls without even trying. "Thank you," she said softly, meeting his eyes. "That's kind of you to say." He smiled again, that easy, warm smile that always made her heart feel lighter. "It's true. You deserve kindness, Linda." It was the first time he'd said her name like that without the Mrs. Lee, as if they Mrs., and it startled her. She didn't correct him. The next day, Ethan showed up again, unannounced but not unwelcome. "You forgot these," he said, holding up a small bag. Inside were the lemons she'd accidentally left at the store. She laughed. "You drove all the way here just for lemons?" "Maybe," he said. "Or maybe I just needed an excuse to see you." She shook her head, smiling. "You're impossible." He helped her in the garden that afternoon, trimming the overgrown hedges while she watered the flowers. It was a quiet, sunny day, and they talked about everything his childhood. Her late husband, the things they both missed, and the things they still hoped for. There were moments of laughter, but also moments of silence that felt deeper than words at one point. Ethan wiped sweat from his forehead and said, "You're not like most people I meet." Linda raised an eyebrow. "Oh, is that good or bad?" He chuckled. "Definitely good. Most people talk just to fill the air. You talk when it matters." She smiled, touched. "Maybe that's just age teaching me to value quiet." "Then I hope I age like that," he said softly. They shared a look long enough for Linda to realize the conversation had shifted again, teetering on the edge of something delicate. She looked away first, pretending to fuss with a watering can by the time they finished. The sun had begun to set, painting the garden gold. Ethan stayed for dinner again, and when he left, he lingered at the door, as though reluctant to go. "Can I come by next week?" he asked. "You don't have to keep checking on me, Ethan," she said gently. "I know," he replied. "But I want to." She smiled, unable to refuse. "Then yes, you can." That night, Linda sat by the window long after he'd gone. She tried to make sense of the emotions swirling inside her warmth. Confusion, gratitude, and something else she dared not name. It wasn't love. Not yet. But it was connection. Something real. Something rare. Over the next few weeks, Ethan became a regular part of her days. He helped her with errands, fixed things around the house, and sometimes just dropped by to talk. Neighbors began to notice, and one even teased her gently at the store. "Linda, you've got yourself quite the helper." "He's handsome, too." Linda laughed it off, but inside she felt a strange mix of embarrassment and happiness. She knew how it must look. an older woman and a younger man spending time together. But to her, it wasn't about appearances. It was about feeling alive again. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching a summer storm roll in, Ethan spoke quietly. You ever think about how people come into our lives at just the right time? Linda nodded slowly. Yes, though sometimes we don't realize it until later. He turned to her, rain softly tapping against the roof. I think meeting you is like that for me. She looked at him, her heart tightening. Ethan. He smiled gently. Don't worry, I'm not saying anything I shouldn't. I just mean, you remind me that kindness still exists. That connection can be simple, real. Linda felt her eyes sting with quiet emotion. You're a good man, Ethan. He shook his head. I just had a good teacher. The storm deepened outside, thunder rolling across the distance. Inside, they sat in silence, both lost in thought. There was no need to explain what was happening between them. It wasn't romance in the usual sense. It was something more fragile, more profound to hearts finding comfort where they least expected it. When he finally stood to leave, Ethan hesitated at the door. Thank you, he said softly. For what? Linda asked. For letting me in. And then he was gone, leaving behind only the sound of rain and the soft glow of memory. Linda stood there for a long while, feeling a mix of sadness and gratitude. Life had surprised her not with grand gestures, but with quiet moments that made her heart remember what warmth felt like. As she turned off the lights and went to bed, she whispered to herself, some people come into your life not to stay forever, but to remind you how to feel again. And for Linda, that was enough.